Well, welcome. My name's Ron Schindler, and I'm going to be talking to you about living in a SharePoint modern world. Just a reminder, if you haven't seen this already, but we're not going to get together and hug each other for another year. So March 2021, be ready for the Microsoft 365 conference. Thank you for all of our sponsors. Great to have sponsors at a virtual event. Thanks for all their work. And myself, well, I'm Ron Schindler. I'm in Layton, Utah, in the United States, and I am a SharePoint architect and about everything else that gets assigned to me with a company called Sovereign SP. Interesting fact, I've been to all 50 states in the US and all of Canadian provinces, so I have gotten around a little bit. Not traveling that much anymore, but for 12 years straight I traveled and did a lot of Microsoft training, certification training and things. So I do love creating solutions for people that don't know the possibilities. It's always fun to go in and see somebody using SharePoint for basically a file and folder structure, and they're just saving things, but they don't know really what they can do. And it's fun to just let people know what they can do. I do speak Japanese as a second language, and I love to ski and surf. In the summertime, I either go down to California to get some surfing in, or I do some paddleboarding locally. So that's me, and let's talk about this thing called modern SharePoint. I picked this topic because last year when I decided that I needed to figure out the modern SharePoint experience, I got so frustrated. It seemed to me that nothing worked, and it was just a way to make pages look pretty without much functionality. I was introduced to SharePoint online in 2009 with BPOS, which became Office 365. And there have been some big functionality changes through the versions. But what I've noticed is that there hadn't been much in the way of look and feel changes. The modern page arrives, and I really hated it. I just didn't know what to do with it. I tried to do things that I had been doing in regular SharePoint, and I just couldn't do it. So I waited for a while. I tried to pick it up again, and lately it has been so much better. I was struggling to find a use for all those graphics and how to tie in all the previous functionality, but Microsoft has jumped through hoops to make it become a reality now. So today's the day that we're going to start using this modern world, and we're going to be using it to do everything, hopefully. The secret to change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And that's what I'm learning to do. So I'm going to demo most of the time, and we'll come back to the slides. And what we're going to see in the demo is page comparisons. We're going to look at new and old list comparisons. We're going to look at web app comparisons, how we add things, how we edit things. We're going to look at some of the graphical adjustments that have happened. And we're going to look at a little bit of the integration with Teams. So let's go ahead and shift over to that. All right, so I'm starting off with just a classic site, and it's not really fancy, but this is a site that has something on it that is a little bit difficult to do in a modern site, so I picked this. Now, of course, we can make things like document libraries, and we can make links to different places, and we can also put lists on our sites. This page also has an image map, and so we're going to get to that a little bit later. But I want to point out some things here. In the old way of doing things, when we wanted to edit, The layouts in the old pages used the whole page. And when I first started using Modern, I noticed that it just wouldn't use that far right side. And I was a little frustrated. But I did find the way, finally, to get that fixed. So we'll share that a little bit later on. We did have different layouts that were available, very much like Modern gives us today. But these were kind of set. You had to basically decide how you wanted your page to be set up and stick with it. And then if you wanted to change it, you could change it, but you had to drag all your apps different places. So the old was a little clunky. I didn't know it at the time because I was used to using the old. But now, as I use the Modern, I realize how much this was out of date. When we added lists to this page, it was interesting because when we wanted to insert something, you'd have to find your cursor somewhere. And sometimes putting things at the very top was almost impossible, so you'd have to put them somewhere else and then drag them up. When we inserted our web parts, we could actually put them in, but the next step was always going to the app itself and doing some adjustments. And then it would go off the screen like this, and we would go in and edit the web part. And then we'd have to tell it, again, we'd have to slide all the way over. We'd have to tell it what view to use and apply that to the page. So a little bit clunky there. When I go up to the gear here, you notice that there's a way to edit the page, but there's really no way to add a new page from this. That's changed a little bit. I'm going to go out of this classic page, and I don't want to mess up my nice classic page, so I'll leave without saving anything. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to Site Contents. In Site Contents, you can create a new page here. When we go to create a new page like this, it creates a modern blank page. That's what this is called. Now it has a header and it has a place to put comments in, but that's it. The rest is up to you to add. I'm just going to go ahead and save this page. You have to give it a name to save it. So we're going to call this Demo 1. And let's just go ahead and change one other thing on here. We'll just change that to be image and title only. Let's add a picture here. Let's go ahead and add our, sorry, I'm going to add this one here. No. We get to set our focal point. So I'm going to drag that up here so I can see the tops of these pages. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and save, but notice that when I save, there's two options. You can save it as a draft and you can save it as a template. There's also publish. So publishing my page will let me go ahead and create this page, and it will now be published out. I have some options to add the page to navigation, post it as a news item. I can even email somebody and say, our page is live, you can now go to it. Or I can save the page as a template over here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to my navigation. You'll see it show up there. And then we're going to also save this page as a template. So when you save it as a template, it's going to ask you, what do you want to call this template? Our new pages. Once I've given it a name, I can go ahead and save that page template. All right, now that was pretty easy. Once we're on a modern page, if we go up to the gear, you'll notice that now we have something that says add a page. So coming from a modern page, adding a new page, now we get a lot of options. You'll notice that here's our template that we just added, our new pages template. We also have the option of doing blank, visual, and basic text pages. Well, blank is the one we just started from that had the header information and the little comment section. Visual is a nice experience because it gives you everything. It gives you a little chunk of everything. Now, you may not use everything, but it gives you ideas, and it puts everything out like text boxes, graphic boxes, and lets you kind of decide how you want to use it. So if you're looking for ideas, use the visual, let it throw everything out. You can always delete things off the page and add other things as well. If you're doing more of blog posting and newsletters and things like that for your internal intranet, then use the basic text. It just has text boxes ready to go. Type your text in. We're going to go ahead and use the visual, and we're going to create a new page with that. It's always in the way, isn't it? And we're going to go ahead and add our graphic up here to the top of this again. Now notice I dragged that up there and I lost that focal point item, but you can also come back here and set the focal point anytime you want to a different place on that image. I don't really like the big orange box, but know that the orange comes from the theme that I've picked for this site. So if I don't want the orange, I can actually go and edit this and tell it to just use the image and title. That way the orange box goes away. I have options of just seeing it plain like that. Pretty ugly. Might as well use the graphics. There's overlap so that your name can go over the top of it. I kind of want to do this one here. All right. Let's go ahead and publish this page. Whoops, I got to name my page. And we'll add that one as well. Another place that you can find your templates, just to let you know, that if you go to your pages, you'll see that templates are down here at the very bottom. And there's our templates that we created. So you can go in there at any time and update those templates, add new things to them. And then when people are creating new pages, they can actually use that template. Well, let me show you something that our pages did not get added there. There we go. Okay, let's go back to our demo 1 page here. Now remember that when we were on our classic page, I had something that was a image map. Now image maps are just an image underneath with some HTML code over the top, letting us do things like clicking on a link, taking us to another website. Well, in the old classic view, you'll notice that this was actually a snippet of code, which in the modern sites, we're not really allowed to add free-flowing code into the page. Now you can actually do a lot with SPFX and do your own widgets and things, but just right out of the box, it's a little hard to go and add this kind of image piece. So I'm going to take this snippet of code here, and this is what makes it possible to do that image mapping and click on items. Then I'm going to go over to my modern page, and we're going to go into edit the page. And I'm going to add, there's an embed, and there's also a code snippet. Now, if I was coming from the classic view, I would think, oh, great, I can add code in here. Well, you can pick what kind of code you want, and I can paste that code in. Pretty cool. If I publish my site, that's what I get. I get code. Kind of interesting that it doesn't actually work the way that it did in the classic view. Now, while we're waiting for that to be fixed and updated by Microsoft, there are some other things that don't quite work the same way. For instance, doing queries. And like I say, all this coding is now going to our automate features and Power Apps, and they're not using the code right directly in the pages anymore. So you got to find different ways to do query strings and bring up a page based on a query string. Those are some things that are a little frustrating right now. But I'm going to show you some ways I got around this image map. Image maps actually can be done in a lot of different ways, and so I'm going to add in a file viewer here. Now in my files, I have a PowerPoint, and just using regular PowerPoint, you can actually put words on and you can make links in them, right? So I could have multiple slides, of course, but I only have one slide here. And I can click on these to go to different places. So essentially, I have created the same thing that I created in the other, but without code. Now let's add another file type. Another way to do it is to do a Word document. Now this is a Word document with that same image in there with links over it. The problem with this one is that you can't always control how it looks. So I can tell this to do full page, and it will look like this until I go out of this and come back in. And then it goes back to its 100%, which is kind of strange. You'd have to work with Word and creating your document to the exact size that you need in the window and go through a lot of hoops to get that one to work. Well, the next option is if you do this in Word, you can just save it as a PDF. And PDFs work pretty good in here doing this kind of thing. So here's a PDF now. Well, let's republish this and just see the difference between them. Okay, now if I go to my Demo 2 page and then come back to my Demo 1 page, there goes the Word. The Word freaks out. The PowerPoint stays pretty stable, and it works. If I click on it, it's going to go to that other page. Okay. The Word links will still work, but the size is just hard. You're taking up a whole area for nothing. And this one will also work in Adobe. If you have Adobe Acrobat, the Pro model, you can go in and actually change the colors of these links and things like that and make them pretty nice. But all these links will also work. So those are some ways to get around some of what the modern views don't really provide. And I'm sure that those kind of things are going to be coming out sooner than later as we go forward. So one thing that I was having trouble with when I started using the modern sites is this right-hand side over here not being used up. And when I went in and looked at the sections, for instance, I had one column, I went to 2 columns, but 2 columns still only uses that same area. And the left over here, or the right over here, was left blank. Well, what you can do is there's another section that you can add called a vertical section. And it looks like it's just floating out there to the right of some imaginary section. Well, the imaginary section is whatever sections you have. So if I have a 2-section area, I have a 1 section, a 3 section, it's going to just float to the right of all those. And now I've got the page filled. I can put things over in that right column, like maybe this one here. We'll put our code. Whoops, I got the wrong one. Put our code over here. Dragging and dropping is another great feature of our modern. We can just move things around so quickly. I can take things that I don't like, click on them, get rid of them pretty quickly. That makes it really nice. All right, so we just have those. So that's some of what the pages are doing. We're going to come back to the pages in a minute. Let's look at what we get with lists. So this is a classic list, and out of the box, classic list or modern list, they're going to look very much the same. Now remember, in classic, or maybe you're still using classic, if you want to go and make a new view, you can create a view, and it lets you create a view from scratch using, come on, where are you? Using a standard view. You could make a calendar view, a datasheet view, a Gantt view, and you can start from an existing item. So if I've already got a view, I might want to go and use this one and just change one of the filters on it. So I'm going to start my view from this dessert view. I'm going to call this allergies. And I'm going to go down here and change what we're filtering. So I want to show when people say that they do have food allergies, and so I'm going to say that it is not equal to no. And now I have this one that shows me the people that have allergies, or that doesn't equal no, so I've got one that's blank there. Now that was the way to create views, the way to look at views we could see here. And the modern is going to look a lot different. We have, in the classic, we've got our whole ribbon up here that we can use. We can even go customize it in InfoPath, if anybody remembers how to use that. Let's look at the modern. So the same list, modern view, takes a little more room. It does create a lot of white space as you're going down. So if you have a list that's 1,000 items and you're only viewing 150 or 200, you're still going to have this space in here. Even if you make things as small as you can in the text, it's going to leave a white space. The views are a little different here. So I have my views over here on the right-hand side, and I can switch those pretty easily. If I want to make one, a new one, notice there's nothing that says create a new view here. What I can do is I can save this view as something else. So if I'm on the all items, I could go ahead and save it over here. If you click on new, this is not a new view, this is a new item being added. So the only way that we can really create one quickly is just to save the view as something else. This is my new view. Oh my goodness, can't spell. So it's the same as my all items view right now. But once I do that, then I can go in and I can edit this current view. And I could take away some of the things in this view. Click OK. So it's maybe a little cleaner than my all items list, which had too many things in it. Good reasons for creating views. Remember that with flow, for instance, if you want to limit what you're trying to add into your flow, a lot of times it's real important to create a view that just has the items in it that you need to use in flow. Or automate, sorry, Power Automate, Old Habits Die Hard. So we can make a view for that. We can make a view to show on our front page. And the really nice thing that's come about recently is this formatting. Notice that the allergies I've got in red and they're underlined. If we did that before in Classic, you had to put a line of code on the view page that would do some formatting. It was not really fun, and it had to be done on every single view. Well, now it's a lot easier. If I go to a certain column, I can go to the column settings and I can say to format this column. And right now, I have this rule where the text is looking red and underlined. And I can go, sorry, I could put a little, maybe a little symbol next to it as well. I could go and fill in a different color. I can make this bold. So a lot of things we can do to bring attention to something just one column at a time. We can also do something like when we're on this view, we can also go in and format the current view. We can do something like this where we're doing every other row. We can change the colors of it. We can do some conditional formatting of certain rows that we want to pick out of this, or columns. And another thing that we can do with formatting is something like this, where we can actually choose to do the whole row at once. And every item is different, and we can change this to be a different fill item for each one. So main dishes, dessert, chips, appetizer, and drinks. So we've got all different colors for it now. Now let me go ahead and cancel that real quick. I want to show you what happens when we add this to a page. So let's go back to our page here. Let's edit it. I'm going to take this out because it's ugly. And let's take this section out. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a list. Now you can scroll up and down if you're familiar with where things are. You can also just type in list and it takes you to the options that are available. I see that I can add two different lists that are on this site. I'm going to add this one in. Now, this is going to be scrolled all the way to the right because my view was set up with all that information. But I have created some other views. So for instance, that allergy view, I've got this one. And I've got, I think that one's, let's do dessert. Now dessert, notice I don't have to scroll because I made this one just those two columns. Fun thing is that you can add this over and over again, and it's very quick to add a new one in here. Change my view to main dish. Okay, and while I'm in here, dessert, unlike desert. And then I'm going to go back to our list. So you don't see any formatting here right now. So let's go back to our list. Oops, I want to publish this first. Then we'll go back to our list. All right, so we didn't see any difference in those because we didn't go through with those changes, right? So I'm going to go ahead and format this column now again. We're going to edit those. So our main dish will be yellow. Dessert will stay. Chips will do gray. And appetizer will do pink. Wish there were more colors there. Notice that there's not a whole lot of colors to choose from. Even if we went here to the more, we still don't have a lot of options. It would be nice to have a color wheel there and be able to choose anything. We can change the font on this. We could just bold it if we wanted to, just the appetizers. Go back and hit our main dish. We'll bold the main dish. And then we're going to save that. Now, in the classic page, whenever you changed your view, you had to go back and republish your view in the page. Kind of a pain. So I want you to see how this worked out. We'll go back to demo 1 here. Those views don't look like they're the right ones. Let's go ahead and add another view. Oops, I didn't save these views, I don't think. I didn't add them here, that's why. This one was dessert. Notice that our color comes in automatically. I'm going to go change something again so that you can see that happen immediately. But okay, we're going to add another one in here. Let's add our allergies. All right, and let's republish. I'm going to go back here. Just to show you how easy it updates, I'm going to go ahead and change this formatting on this allergy one here. And let's do our fill color as yellow. And let's do I'm going to do top and bottom. Save that, and it's immediate. I don't have to republish or anything. If I go over to demo 1 here, you're going to see down here, now it has double lines, and it just updates. I don't have to go back into this, save it or anything, which is really nice. So it's a lot easier to put your list views on a page now than it used to be. So lists themselves, if I'm in a classic list and I wanted to create a new list, I can go up to the wheel here and I can add an app and go in and create a custom list. Okay, this is the way we used to do it, right? Or I can go to a modern page and I can create a new list from here. Create a name and save it into our site, right? Let's cancel that. I can also go to site contents and I can create a new list here. You might notice that when you go to site contents and you create something, you get a lot more options. So when I do the list here, I have some options that weren't offered elsewhere. So I could create a new list just like I would have somewhere else, type in the name and it creates a list, and I go in and I fill in every field and create my list from scratch. Nice things that are here now. I was getting a little worried about the From Excel because it was starting not to work very much and you had to use it in IE, and you know, the old version just wasn't doing well. So it was real exciting to see this pop up one day. But from an existing list is kind of nice because it searches your whole site. So all the way back to your root, you can find any of your sites, go to them and duplicate another list on your site here. Now you'll notice that I can't create, and you're thinking why, I've selected it. Well, you always have to put in a name for it. So that's one thing you just need to remember as you're doing this. And then you can create. And what it does, it brings in all those columns for me, and I can go ahead and start filling in information. It's awesome and fast. It's pretty cool that way. If I go back and create a new list again, this time from Excel, there's some things you need to know about this. Now you can upload an Excel from your computer. You can also go and find one in your files that are part of your site. In order to use Excel lists, they have to be table enabled. Okay, so I'm going to show you what happens if you try to pick one that doesn't have table enabling. I don't know if that's a word. But I'm going to go ahead and hit next, and you're going to see this is a nice way of telling you you're doing something wrong. It actually gives you the information you need to go and fix this file by going into Excel, highlighting all the cells, choosing the format as a table, and then it says here you can go to it and do it yourself. Okay, so let me just show you what happens in Excel. So here's my Excel with no table. I basically just have information in here, and it's a regular Excel document. You need to highlight it, and you need to go up and say format as a table, and you can pick what kind of colors and everything. It's not really that important to get the colors. It's just the fact that it wants to create these filters and things, and once it's in a mode like that, then you can go back and you can add it in. And when it comes from an Excel list, it's going to bring everything in that table. And you can choose which table to use. If you have multiple tables in there, you can pick from them. And it brings it in with all our data, which is pretty cool. And I go to create, and I can't because I haven't put in that name. So remember, you always have to put in that name. All right, so I've got a modern list. For instance, I might want to go do some formatting on this. Those percentages don't really look right, do they? Oh well, there's some negatives there. So this might be fun. We could actually do format this column. Oops, sorry. Remaining percentage is less than 1. Let's change that to nice bright red, bold. Oh, they're all less than 1. Not less than 1. Oh, I can't do, I'd have to do something a little more complicated for that. That's what I get for trying to think on my feet. Anyway, I could actually show, I could figure out the formula so I could show just the negatives instead of the positives, and it would show a little more detail to me and point out the things that I'd be worried about on my financials. So that's kind of what I wanted you to get out of the list, and wanted you to see how different they are and how great they are actually, being able to add them to a page just one after another and showing different views. And you could show a big view out here on the main screen. It doesn't matter where you put them, but it's really nice to be able to work with those really quickly. Now, let's talk about some of the integration pieces. I'm going to go to a Teams window here. And since we're all familiar with Teams now that COVID-19 has forced us all to use it, I'm going to show you a few little tricks with using SharePoint and the modern pieces in here. So first thing I can do here is I can go up and add pieces up here, add tabs to my teams. So I'm going to add a document library. Now, the nice thing is it shows me all of my different sites, and I can go into one of them and choose which documents I want to make a library out of. We're going to do this one because it's going to show us some things here. And I'm just going to save it with its own name. So it's really nice to be able to go to that document library that's on our site as well while we're in Teams. And we really don't have to send people off to our site to get documents out. They can do it right here in Teams. Also, when they save here, they can actually save it and we'll see it in our site. So that's really good. I want you to notice what happens when we create. I'm going to have to, oh, I don't have to move that. I'm going to go ahead and create a new channel. Let's add the M365 VM channel. All right, when I did that, what happened was in my document library, you'll now notice that there is a new folder called M365 VM. So every channel has their own folders. And when you go into, for instance, this test channel here, and you put something in the files, you're actually putting it in that folder. So if I go back to my document library under this test channel, you'll notice that that item is there. So you can use them two different ways. You could lose yourself going into every one of these channels and finding everything, or you can add your document library, and then you can just use your document library to go to each one of those channels, folders and files and so forth. That's a really fun, easy way to get to your documents quick. Now, you could also create, for instance, forms by going up and adding in, Microsoft Forms right into your Teams, and you probably know that, but you could create a little survey for your team, right? And then you also can see what is filled in or have them fill it in. So when you add forms, it's going to ask you some questions. Do you want to create a form for your team, or do you want to add an existing? Now, if you're using forms to tie into Automate and you're updating a SharePoint list with it and everything, you might want to add that existing form. And all that's going to do is give you the input to that form. If you want to create one and be the administrator of it, then you will get something like I've got here where you can edit the form. You can see your responses right in here. And you can also add the fill-in for them once it's created. So different things you can do with the forms in here, but they will link back to your SharePoint environment if you've created the forms and linked in the SharePoint list and Automate and so forth. Another thing is, when we created that page, we can add from SharePoint, we can add our pages. And you'll notice that my classic page is not there. It doesn't let you add classic pages in, but I can add my modern page. And the nice thing is it looks just like the page that we came from. It fits it in. This is one I created that has most of our stuff in it, but notice that it fills in the whole screen. We can see the whole page. It's really great to be able to just put that page on there. People don't have to really go to SharePoint anymore. They can just do everything in Teams. The other thing is we can add lists in here. So if we go back to SharePoint, we've created these lists. Sometimes it doesn't update, and I just close it out and do it again. Come on. It's not looking for it. There we go. Third time's the charm, fourth time, something like that. You'll notice we have pages up here at the top, and we have lists as well. So I can bring in those lists that I created. Any one of those ones that I had, we'll bring in this one here. Guess my network is causing problems. And I can create the view that I want here. But here's the thing, if I go back to my modern SharePoint, come back to my event sign up, it's going to go back to the all items view. So this is really taking you right to the list and letting you do all your own filtering and looking for your different views. It's not actually going to set it and keep it that same way that you put it in. So those are just some ways that you can add items in from SharePoint and work with them. And you know, we do some work with Planner as well, which is really nice to put in here. We in our company, we actually created a technical support out of Planner, and it really helps with tasks and things. And we drag those. We have ticket items that come in, and we can view them, and that's something we use in Teams as well. So I'm going to go ahead and oops. Let's go back to our all right. So, are you excited now about modern SharePoint? Let me just tell you that we do a few of our sites still in Classic because we just can't get the modern to do what we need it to do. Most of those people that are doing anything like a document storage, document maintenance, management, the modern sites will work excellent. If you're doing a lot of graphics, if you're doing internal intranet sites, those kind of things work great. We have some complex sites that we create that have a lot of query strings and such that we just can't get to work in modern. And we'll keep trying, but until then we have a mix, and it's nice that you can mix both those in, either the classic or the modern, and you can switch back and forth between the two as well. Just wanted to make sure that we went through these last slides with you, and make sure that you put your name in for the virtual headset, the Oculus Quest. Got to see one of those. They're pretty cool. You can find yourself going through a whole airplane looking for seats and everything else. There's charity funds. You can go to these links and donate to some of these relief funds. And then in the end, there are speaker feedback and event feedback links that you can use, and they work pretty good. I've used them already. I'm going to go ahead and leave that one up, and we'll look to see if there's any questions here. Let me kill that. We'll go to this. And keep that on the screen for you. Oops, maybe. Sorry, looking through the questions here, and then I'll put that up. So let's see if there's any questions. Todd F says, do you know why in the Power Platform Admin Center it shows flows that do not have a name or a creator email? That must have been for Someone else, let's see. Oh, there's all kinds of questions that we're going through after. I guess I've got to go all the way to the bottom and then start from there and go backwards. There we go. One thing I see here is SharePoint 2019 Modern Sites doesn't have hub sites. Should we stay with SharePoint 2019 Classic? Good question, and I'm not really sure on that, but you can hub sites. I would imagine you just have to stay with Classic until those things show up, but you know, just like I say, there's things showing up every day that are getting kind of exciting. So I think with this virus, we've had a lot of development going on that has been released. I'm not sharing my, just want to share one item, that one. Okay. You should be able to see that item. Other questions, can you group list items in modern view? Can you group list items in modern view? Not really sure how you mean group list items. Not really sure what that question's asking. Group the list items in a modern view. I think you just want to create your own view of whatever items you want to see, but I'm not sure what you're trying to get at. And I just keep getting that same question, but I don't know what it means. Publish new, okay. You used to be able to group by a metadata column. So, yeah, I think you might be talking about, well, kind of like, well, are you talking about query strings? Because grouping by a metadata column, every one of our columns are a metadata column, so I guess I don't have an answer for you there. Oh, it limited how long the list of items was. So you're talking about maybe when you reach your 5,000 items or something, doing a metadata column so that you wouldn't get so many, possibly. I'm not really sure how you're doing that different than views, but no query string. I don't know a way of grouping them by metadata in the modern view. Sort and group. Yeah, I don't think we have that much capability to do that yet, because we only have the ability to format them. We can do some filtering, but the filtering is kind of very simplistic. So I'm not really sure you can accomplish that same thing in modern right now. I would imagine that they'd want you to use more of the Power Apps to create something that you'd be able to view all those in and sort them and so forth. but that would be my guess. I'm going to go ahead and put this back up here, and why don't you send me go ahead and contact me on Twitter and send me those questions and let me do some research. And it'll be good for me to figure it out too. I am pretty active on Twitter, so if you needed to get a hold of me, that's one place that I look most of the time. And appreciate all of you sitting through the presentation. I hope that this helped you to use modern sites a little better. Thanks, and I'll exit and